Here are 12 brutally honest truths about retirement that most people are too polite to tell you. Now, some of these might hurt a little bit, and that's sort of the point, because the people who hear them and take action are going to end up getting ahead of the people who keep pretending these truths are not reality. I'm Tyler, I'm a financial planner, and I deal with this every single day. Let's get into it. Truth number one, nobody's coming to save you. The first truth is probably one of the most avoided, and that's that nobody's going to come save you. There's no pension waiting for most of us anymore. Social Security might only cover a fraction of what you'll need, and that's even getting squeezed. The market isn't going to bail you out with some kind of miracle rally right when you need it, and the company that you gave 30 years to, unfortunately, does not care, and I know it sounds harsh, but they do not care what happens to you after you clock out for the last time. And a lot of people are just betting that something's going to work out in the future, that they'll get an inheritance, they'll hit the market just right, or that they're just going to figure it out when they get there. And that is the absolute opposite of having a financial plan. The truth is, the only person responsible for your retirement is you. Once you accept that, you stop waiting and you start building. And the people who decide to accept this early, they get a 10 to a 20-year head start on the people who accept it at 64. Truth number two, if you're behind, time was the thing you spent, not money. Here's one thing that's really hard to hear. If you're behind on retirement, the thing you're running low on isn't money, it's time. Having compound growth is the most powerful force in building wealth, and that tool runs on time, not on how much you make. So someone who saved a little starting at 25 will often end up with more than someone who saved a lot starting at 45. This is not related to earnings, it's how much runway you had for the money to compound. It's simply having more years for your money to grow. Now, nobody wakes up at 35 and decides they just don't care about retirement. Life happens, kids grow, careers shift, parents begin to age, and year after year, there's always something that feels more urgent than your future self. The typical household, age 55 to 64 right now, only has about $185,000 saved for retirement. That's it. And the reason usually isn't that they didn't want to save or that they couldn't save. It's that the years slipped by and other things just got in the way. Now, here's the part that matters. You can't get the lost years back, but the second best time to start is right now. Every year you keep waiting makes the math so much harder. Truth number three, the reason you haven't looked at your numbers is that you're afraid of them. So most people approaching retirement have never run their numbers. They've got some type of rough idea of what they've saved, but they've never sat down and figured out whether it's really enough. I'll tell you why. Most of the time, they're afraid of the answer. And depending on your personality, spreadsheets could be one of the most fulfilling or absolute draining things you look at. But regardless of how you feel about them, people often avoid them because what the spreadsheet is telling them. There's a little bit of avoidance here. They think as long as I don't look, I don't have to face it. As long as the number stays a little bit unclear, they can keep telling themselves they're probably going to be fine. But here's the thing. The fear of the number is always worse than facing the issue at hand. If you can understand the number, you can begin taking steps towards a solution. I sit down with people who have been carrying this dread for years, and then with an hour of running the math, most of them feel better than they have in a very long time. There's something about understanding where you stand, good or bad, that can bring you relief. It's not always that the news is good. Sometimes you've got real work to do, but now you can see it, and you can't fix something you keep refusing to look at. It might feel like it, but the avoidance isn't protecting you. It might be the most expensive thing you're doing. Truth number four, your kids are not your retirement plan. This one can get a little bit uncomfortable, but it matters. Your kids are not your retirement plan. Now, a lot of people assume without ever saying it that if things get tight, their children are going to step in. Maybe they'll help with the bills. Maybe they'll take you in. And you're thinking you've helped them at times, so they'll figure it out. And maybe they would, who knows? But here's what that means. It means transferring your financial stress onto the people you love most right when they're trying to raise their own families and build their own retirements. One of the most loving things you could do for your kids is not become their financial burden, to have your own plan, and to be the parent who adds to their life in retirement. I'll reiterate, it's not that they wouldn't desire to do it. Of course, family supports family, but you're putting an element of risk into the plan that hinges upon them actually being able to support you. And who knows how that might play out in their own lives. Build the plan so that when you're 80, your kids are inheriting your wisdom and they're getting your time, not inheriting stress and bills. That's the goal, and it only happens if you take responsibility for it now. Truth number 5, working one more year will do more than any investment you pick. So believe it or not, people spend hours trying to find the perfect investment. The fund that returns just a little bit more, the strategy that squeezes out an extra percent, and then they ignore the single most powerful move available to them. They could just work one more year. One additional year of work does 4 things at once. Here they are. You add another year of saving, you add another year of growth, you shorten the number of years your money has to last, and you can grow your Social Security benefit. One more year of work can do more for your retirement security than years of investment tinkering. There's not really a fund that does that. No rebalancing does that, and no clever tax move really comes close. And look, I'm not telling you to work forever. I'm telling you that if you're behind, the most powerful tool you have isn't hidden in your portfolio. It's on your calendar. And most people refuse to consider it because it's not the answer they were wanting. Truth number 6, the market might crash right when you retire, and that's not bad luck. If you're retired for 25 or 30 years, you're not really asking if you're going to hit a bear market, you're asking how many. And who knows when. But over a 30-year retirement, a downturn early on isn't just some bad luck or a bad hand you got dealt. It's just the reality of markets. And early on in retirement, it might be one of the worst possible times for it. It's when you're pulling money out of your portfolio that's also falling and you're selling shares at a loss. Those shares are gone for good. Even when the market recovers, you're not fully going to recover with it. A 30% drop in your first year of retirement could follow you for the rest of your life. And here's the thing. Most people know this is a risk and they don't do anything about it. They cruise right into retirement, fully invested, no cushion, just hoping the timing works out. One of the simplest fixes takes one single decision. You keep 2 to 3 years of expenses in cash before you retire. When the market drops, you live on the cash and leave your investments alone to recover. It's a simple buffer, and it's what gives you room to ride out those downturns. Truth 7, most of the advice you're following wasn't built for you. Now, believe it or not, the financial world is built on noise, complexity, and a little bit of fear mixed in. Because of that, most of the retirement advice you're reading and watching wasn't built for your situation. The aggressive Roth conversion strategies, complicated tax moves, the estate planning maneuvers, the stuff that really only makes mathematical sense for someone with $3, $5, or $10 million, that's who it's created for. And then it got repackaged and sold to everyone else. So if you've got 500,000 or a million or even 2 million saved, a lot of that advice doesn't apply to you. And honestly, some of it will cost you money if you follow it. I watch people pay taxes they never needed to pay because they followed a strategy built for someone in a completely different situation. So before you follow any retirement advice, ask one question. Was this built for someone like me? Because if it wasn't, think twice before following it. Truth number 8, you're going to be bored and the money won't fix it. So this has nothing to do with money and everything to do with whether you're happy. You're going to be bored and you're going to need a purpose in retirement. And no amount of money is going to fix that. People spend 30 years dreaming about the day they no longer have to go to work. Then they stop working, 6 months pass, they're restless, they feel useless, and they don't know who they are anymore. Their whole identity was wrapped up into their job, and when the job went away, there was nothing left to support this image they built of themselves. I've watched people with plenty of money be very miserable in retirement, and it wasn't because of the finances, it was meaning and purpose. The happiest retirees I work with didn't just escape work. They ran towards something, a purpose, a project, a way of spending their days that meant something to them. If you don't know what that is before you retire, and I would even venture to say even now, regardless of how many years you have left, the freedom you've been dreaming about is going to feel a lot like emptiness. And that's because there is more to living this life than the building you walk into every day. If you don't figure that out early, you're going to struggle. You'll spend a lot of time dreaming and talking about who you were rather than finding meaning in who you are. Truth number 9, inflation is going to rob you slowly while you watch the wrong threat. So most retirees are watching the wrong threat. They're terrified of a market crash. So they move everything into cash and bonds, and then they start to feel safe. And in doing that, they hand themselves over to the threat that gets most people. That's inflation. Inflation doesn't make the most headlines. It doesn't crash your account in a single day. It just slowly and steadily begins to eat about half of your buying power over 25 years. The $400 grocery bill now becomes $800. The fixed income that felt comfortable at 65 starts feeling really, really tight at 80. So by protecting yourself from the dramatic risk, which was the crash, you guarantee a very slow and painful problem. Your money stops growing and inflation begins to eat away at it, and you start kicking yourself for playing it too safe. If you're going to be alive for, let's say, 30 more years, your money needs to grow for 30 years. Playing it too safe isn't safe. It's a very slow motion way of coming up short in the end. Truth 10. The money conversation you keep avoiding with your spouse, it's going to cost you. If you're married, here's something that could affect you more than a bad investment ever will. You and your spouse might not be on the same page about retirement, and you're going to find out at the worst possible time. In most couples, there's one person who handles the money, and then there's the other person that really has no idea what's going on, and really they're not concerned about it. One wants to travel constantly, the other one wants to stay at home. One is ready to stop working, the other one likes the career or the money that the career provides. These differences sit there, unspoken, for years and years. And then retirement arrives and forces them to open up these suppressed thoughts where they turn into fights instead of conversations. I've seen couples with more than enough money to retire who couldn't get on the same page because they never talked about what they really wanted. And just as important, they didn't want to yield to the other person's emotions or opinions. The year you go to retirement is not the time to have these conversations. Have the real conversation now. And I'm not talking about do we have enough or just looking at a Monte Carlo together. I'm talking about sitting down, having an intentional conversation. What does this really look like for each of us? What are we each afraid of? What do we desire in retirement? What do we want to leave behind? What do we want for the kids and grandkids? What are we passionate about? And then what are the unknowns? Have the conversation and listen to each other. That conversation is worth way more than looking at a planning software. Truth 11, you will spend the most in the years you're planning for the least. Almost everyone plans their retirement budget backwards. They assume their spending is going to stay flat or it's just going to climb very slowly. The truth is, the first 5 years of retirement are usually the most expensive 5 years of your life. You're healthy. You finally got the time you wanted, so you do everything that you put off for 3 decades. The trips, the projects, the experiences. You spend more in those early years than you will in your 70s and 80s when you start to slow down. Now, here's why this is dangerous. Those same early years are when a market drop does the most damage. So you've got your highest spending and your highest risk happening at the same time. And most people built a plan that assumed neither of those are happening. So make sure you plan for the expensive version of early retirement. You can always spend less later. What you can't do is unspend a plan that ran out of cushion in year 3. Truth 12, the number you're chasing was never the point. The last truth is one that reframes everything else. The number you've been chasing was never the point. The happiest retirees are not the ones with the most money. Some of the wealthiest people we've worked with are the most anxious because they spent 40 years optimizing a number and never once asked what the number was actually for. The happiest ones knew what they wanted their life to look like, they had people that mattered to them, and they had something that gave their days meaning. The money was just a tool to remove the obstacles so they could go live their life. And money is exactly that. It's a tool. It buys you freedom and options and security, but it doesn't create meaning, and it won't tell you how to spend your one shot at the years after work. That part, that's on you. So do the math. It matters. But don't fool yourself into thinking the math is the hardest part of this equation. The hard part is deciding what you want your life to be when the paychecks stop, and most people never do it. So those are the 12 truths. Now, if you're ready to stop avoiding your numbers and figure out what you need, I made a video that walks through how to find your real retirement number. Not a generic target like 2 million. 3 numbers that fit your real life. And that video's right here. I'll see you there.